TV8 reports Carrizo Gorge and the Impossible Railroad. Tonight we take an in-depth look at the visionary who fought to make reality out of the longtime San Diego dream of a direct rail link to the east, John D. Spreckels, and Bryce Santry, a modern-day visionary who has fought for 8 years to run excursion trains through the most spectacular portion of Spreckels Railroad, the Carrizo Gorge. The Carrizo Gorge is the Grand Canyon of San Diego County. It has been called the most remarkable piece of desert scenery in California, and yet, surprisingly enough, it's almost totally unknown to the residents of San Diego County. Through this 11-mile-long, 2,350-foot-deep canyon runs one of the world's truly amazing railroads, a feat of railroad engineering that is almost unrivaled in the world. Over 50 years ago, iron men, working in intense summer heat, managed to cut horizontal shelves from the almost vertical cliffs and tack 2 steel rails to the sheer walls of Carrizo Gorge. Twisting and turning through the tunnels and over wooden trestles 1,000 feet above the canyon floor, the track seems to hang suspended in space. Some say it's no accident this railroad snakes its way down through Carrizo Gorge on the way to the Imperial Valley. Railroad buffs claim John Spreckels chose the Carrizo route to furnish his passengers with a top-notch scenic attraction. At the turn of the century, many people said such a railroad couldn't be built. They said nature's fortifications, the rugged Laguna Mountains, would stop any man-made attempt to lay track east from San Diego. John Spreckels arrived in San Diego in 1906 and ran head-on into the city's principal obsession. San Diegans, with a wary eye on their rapidly growing rival of Los Angeles, spoke frequently of building a railroad east to give their magnificent harbor an appropriate land transportation link. Unfortunately, Mother Nature blessed Los Angeles with a number of passes through the mountains, while she gave San Diego only a solid mountain barrier. In a simple ceremony on 28th Street in 1907, ground was broken for the San Diego and Arizona Eastern Railroad, and the struggle was on. San Diego held its breath, hoping Spreckels' efforts would succeed where dozens of others had failed. However, Spreckels was different from his predecessors. He believed in what he was doing, and he believed in San Diego. And more importantly, he had the secret financial support of Edward Harriman, who controlled the Southern Pacific Railroad. Even with these advantages, the SD and AE faced delay and disaster. First came the Depression of 1907, and then the untimely death of Harriman in 1909, requiring Spreckels to look elsewhere for financing. Mother Nature continually tried to prove her superiority, unleashing floods that washed out the tracks. A change in route pushed the tracks south into Mexico for 50 miles from Tijuana to Campo, at a time when the fires of revolution burned south of the border. The federal government allowed tourists into Mexico, but no explosives, and this tied the hands of construction crews who were trying to blast through the solid rock foothills. When all these difficulties were overcome and the railroad seemed finally to be making satisfactory progress, the United States entered World War I, and railroad construction was halted in the country. Spreckels argued that his railroad should be exempted from the stop work ruling because of its importance to San Diego, and San Diego's importance to national security. The government agreed, and the construction crews got ready to tackle the toughest section of the entire line, the Carrizo Gorge. Survey teams moved into the gorge to find a practical way through its wilds. A total of 13 different surveys were made. Finally, a route giving the railroad an acceptable 2.2% grade was found. This route, however, twisted and turned around the cliffs of Carrizo Gorge, 1,000 feet above the bottom. The Utah and Toohey Brothers construction companies began the difficult task of laying track from both ends of the gorge in 1917. Foot by foot, hardy construction workers, toiling for 50 cents an hour, carved a ledge out of the cliff and put down rails. As they worked, camps to house the crews were built on the narrow confines of the roadbed. Work areas were so confining, the men had to do most of their work by hand.
Well, I was on the work trains when they were putting in several of these tunnels, tracks, and bridges, and so on, and just a routine of work that you had to go through. That is about my experience with that, except, occasionally somebody may get hurt from falling or something on that order, but that's about the extent of it.
Wasn't it pretty difficult for the construction workers working on the narrow ledges and the heights that they were, and especially boring these tunnels and building these wood trestles? Didn't it present a lot of engineering or construction problems?
Well, yes, there's a lot of engineering construction problems to take and build a tunnel, as long as some of them are, to have them meet exactly in the middle. Why, that's really, I think, quite a job. Of course, we had to lay the track is what we had mostly to do, and ballast it, get it ready for the opening.
Spreckels' previous problems were minor compared to the troubles his railroad ran into in Carrizo Gorge. The summer heat made it impossible to handle steel, so all trestles and tunnel linings were built of wood that came down from the Pacific Northwest in huge log rafts. The wood spawned tunnel fires, which erased much of the work. Besides the fires, workers had to contend with cave-ins, landslides, and a flu epidemic that killed 28 of their number.
The portal slid and eventually went out, and they had to rebuild by putting in another bridge and a small tunnel out just to the west of it. And that took care of that. Was built of wood. Timbers.
Did they have a lot of these landslides and cave-ins while they were constructing the road?
Well, I know of two. Of course, we had minor ones, small ones, and then clearing, a new road, and then maybe when a rain or something washed some rocks down, we'd have to get out, chain them off, and straighten it up so we get by. But the two would be the main ones would be at Tunnel 7 and this one here at Tunnel 15.
Finally, after 2 years, the crews met in the middle of the gorge, and the job was over. It almost made a pauper of John D. Spreckels, but the San Diego and Arizona Eastern Railroad was complete. On November 15, 1919, Spreckels drove the symbolic Golden Spike to officially finish the job. It had taken 12 years and cost $18 million, but San Diego had its long-dreamed-of railroad to the east. With his railroad completed, Spreckels worked to make it profitable. At one time, as many as 16 coach trains a day made their way from San Diego to the Imperial Valley and beyond, connecting in Yuma with crack Southern Pacific passenger trains. Unfortunately, it never became a major eastern passenger link. After World War II, passenger service began to lose $250,000 a year, and it was discontinued in January 1951. But former passengers still remember the Carrizo Gorge stretch.
The tunnel, the largest tunnel, the longest tunnel, is 2,604 feet. You realize that is 1/2 a mile of being pushed right through a hole in solid rock. And you're inside with a roaring train. You can't see out either end. And after so long a time, you see, we were going westward, and that's uphill, and the train's going very slowly through there. It's a steep grade. And after so long a time, you are quite sure that the engineer has lost his way and that you will go on and on and on forever in the dark passages of the earth.
What's it like when you emerge from that long tunnel and many more tunnels in the gorge?
Just as spectacular, because then you go across high trestles that bridge the gorges and that sort of thing. And they are, they're almost frightening because you can't see down the side of the train. Of course, the wheels are underneath, the tracks are there, but you can't see them. There's no roadbed. You have a feeling of being suspended in the air in this clacking position for quite a long time. Then you see the end of the train far behind you, maybe emerging from the tunnel. And you just can't believe that this is the same train that you're on.
Well, it's made quite an impression on you. Have you ever been down through the Carrizo Gorge since then?
No, unfortunately, I have not. I often wish that I could go again.
If an excursion train were to operate through the Carrizo Gorge, would you like to go down through there again?
Most certainly. I'd bust a leg, Mr. Gleason, to go through there again. And that is true of just so many people who have ridden it.
The termination of passenger service on the San Diego and Arizona Eastern only heightened interest in its engineering wonders and magnificent scenery. The former resort hamlet of Jacumba lies only a mile or two from the head of Carrizo Gorge. The trains used to bring summer vacationers, mostly Imperial Valley farmers trying to escape the heat, to the spas and swimming pools of Jacumba. However, all that's gone now. Jacumba was doomed by the advent of superhighways and air conditioning to a passive existence. Not far away at the Desert Tower 8 years ago, San Diegan Bryce Santry viewed a painting of the Carrizo Gorge and walked away with a desire to get a closer look.
This train was snaking through the gorge, through a tunnel, a huge mountain cliff and tunnels, and hundreds of feet above the ground, and a huge canyon. And I was being in San Diego in and out for 41 years. I was totally unfamiliar. Where is this? Where is this? And the man said, "Oh, that's Carrizo Gorge, about 2 miles behind the Desert Tower." And I thought that was fantastic. And all the time in San Diego, I never heard much publicity in Carrizo Gorge. I said, I'd like to ride that. And of course, at that time, things weren't too tight. I was able to grab a ride and hitch a ride, and jump a freight train, a hobo style, so to speak. And I saw this absolutely amazing rocky defile. And then from there, I went from pillar to post into the Union Title Trust to find the history and the background. And I found out it was a very fantastic, spectacular railroad. And I was amazed it was in San Diego County.
When that first hobo-style ride was over, Bryce Santry walked away from the train with a dream that has proved to be his only passion for the last 8 years: excursion trains in Carrizo Gorge. He and a number of associates have formed the Carrizo Gorge Scenic Railroad Company to promote that dream. If the Carrizo Gorge Scenic Railroad Company becomes reality, it will begin here at the Jacumba Railroad Station. This vintage passenger terminal was abandoned years ago by the railroad and is now serving as a private home. Robert Montague is vice president of the Scenic Railroad Company and envisions many changes for Jacumba if his excursion trains are allowed to run. Bob, what are we going to see if your excursion trains are running along these tracks?
We hope to establish a whole new community here, Gene. Not in the sense of rebuilding the town of Jacumba by any means, but establish an old-time railroad community with a station and a platform, a water tower, perhaps a restaurant, conceivably even a hotel where people could come and stay overnight in order to catch an early train.
Well, now, we've been talking about a modest beginning for this excursion train idea. What are the figures? How much do you think it would cost to start something like this?
Well, Mr. Santry has got the estimates for purchase of equipment, arm guards, the rolling stock, the power units, building of the station, paving of the parking lots. Those figures come to approximately $150,000, but we intend on raising more than that, so we'll have an operating cushion to take care of emergencies.
Well, now, how often would you run if you got started? The Carrizo Gorge Scenic Railroad was off and running. How often would you be running down through the gorge and back up again?
As a start, we figured one trip a day, 3 days a week, and those would probably be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, mainly for the weekend.
How many passengers could you carry on one trip?
I think it's projected with the rearrangement of the seating that we plan in the dome liners that we plan, there'll be about 250 capacity per trip. And it would be a round trip. They'd get to see the gorge twice, once on the way down and once on the way back.
And how much would it cost for one ticket to go down there?
Well, to meet the operating costs, and as you know, this is not planned to be a profit-making organization, the charge would be about $5 for the round trip, plus or minus a few cents.
Now, the gorge itself is about 11 miles long. There is a couple of miles in between Jacumba and the top of the gorge. How long would it take to go down to the bottom at Dos Cabezas and back up one complete round trip for $5?
We've timed the freight trains down, and if we ran at the same speed, the cautious speed, and the time to let the people enjoy the view would be about 45 minutes downhill and about an hour and a quarter back up.
So that would be close to 3 hours.
Right.
What would the people be able to see? Now, we know Carrizo Gorge is a spectacular canyon, and there's a lot in there. What is it exactly that makes Carrizo Gorge so tempting for people like yourself to want to put a train down through there?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying, Gene, that there are hundreds and thousands of rail fans in the United States, and some of these people travel all the way across their country and make special detours on their vacations to visit an operating railroad that they can take a ride on. Not just one across the plains, but one which has character. Now, up in the giant redwood trees, there's a railroad known as the Skunk, and many people make it a point to ride that and take the trip through the big trees up there. There's also the Durango and Silverton, which goes across desert-type country and has some trestles and bridges. But ours is unlike any other in the world. The closest thing to ours would be the railroad that goes through the Alps, except we don't ever have any snow in Carrizo Gorge.
The excursion train idea, Bryce Santry's enduring dream, has drawn wide support from individuals and groups in the county over the years. 6 years ago, a total of 34 prominent San Diegans, including Mayor Frank Curran, several city councilmen, then City Attorney Ed Butler, and many bankers and businessmen, petitioned the Southern Pacific Railroad, the present owner of the SD and AE, pleading with the line's president for an excursion train through Carrizo Gorge. The answer, then and now, a categorical no.
Well, for the safety problems that we would have, it creates a real hazard to us due to the remote area. The lack of communications between the 2 points at the beginning and the end of the gorge is a real important problem to us. And the possible interference and disruption of service in event there would be an accident by the excursion train would be a real problem.
The Daily Californian, who interviewed the railroad directly, and they went round and round with him. At that time, that was in 1966, when we tried to get Mayor Curran and the Who's Who of San Diego to get a ride on it. And she said, we don't think it's quite as difficult as the railroad would lead us to believe. And then she also made the crowning statement. She said, many wondrous works have been done through persistence. When people would give up along the line, if someone would just carry them through and persist, they have come to pass. And that's also been one of my inspirations.
No, our management has very definitely and emphatically said that they were not interested in this particular proposal.
Why not?
They have their own reasons.
No reasons that would be verbally given to the public?
I am not able to myself, no.
Well, Gene, I've had some basic, fundamental, powerful encouragement of all places from the railroad itself. And when I, 6 or 8 years ago, when I first talked to the then superintendent of the San Diego and Arizona division of this track, after going round and round with him for 25 or 30 minutes, as I left the room, he said, it can be done, but it'll take some doing. And that's been my guiding light. I figured if he knows every spike, every timber, every tie and track, and he says it can be done someplace along the line, I figured he probably knows what he's talking about.
What about the idea itself? Do you think it has merit? Say, for example, your company did authorize a lease agreement. Do you think a company could make money running excursion trains down through the Carrizo Gorge?
My own personal opinion is that all of the factors being considered, that they would not be able to make money on it.
Why?
Because I do not think they've gone into it in enough depth to make a thorough study. It's just a proposal, hypothetical case, and I do not believe they have really studied the full impact of all the regulations they must adhere to, and furthermore, the problems of insurance and so forth.
I think if Southern Pacific knew how determined I was, because I'll go to the floor of the Congress of the United States, I'll go to the United Nations, because this is so good. It belongs to the public, and it shouldn't be, and I've told them time and time again, I told Mr. Crocker, the passenger traffic director of the Southern Pacific, I said it's a crime of the first magnitude to withhold this from the public. But I want them to get the idea, we don't want them to run a railroad, we just want to lease the track, and we have the public utilities black and white, the code is in our favor, that this is was a perfectly legal maneuver, according to even Fred Hollabaugh. The strange thing, the one-time president of the PUC was in our corporation.
Is Carrizo Gorge and its railroad as spectacular as Bryce Santry says it is? Or is it just another desert canyon? Let's take a trip through the gorge and find out. So this is the Carrizo Gorge and its slow but amazing railroad. An excursion train through here would allow county residents and tourists alike a chance to view this inaccessible area with little appreciable effect on the area's ecology. As might be expected, the strongest partisans for such an excursion concept are found in Hukumba. For them, the Carrizo Gorge Scenic Railroad would bring a rebirth of a town that has withered with the years.
I think it'd be one of the grandest things that ever happened to Acumba, and the people who come to see this beautiful scenery would be so pleased that they'd want to come back many times.
Well, have you ever ridden down through the Carrizo Gorge on a train?
Yes, I have, and it's the most beautiful sight I ever seen. And of course, I'll not tell you how scared I was the first time I went down, and one time's all I've been down, but I would have been down more if they hadn't stopped the excursion down through there.
Oh, I think it'd mean progress, really, because it'd mean getting ahead. And there's a lot of people who would like to see it.
So to you, it would be a very important step?
Yes, it would. Because there's a lot of places I've never been. I've never been on a train before, and I've always wanted to go. So if it comes through, maybe, someday.
Since the Carrizo Gorge is entirely within the boundaries of the Anza Borrego Desert State Park, we asked Park Manager Jack Hesmeyer what he thought of the excursion idea.
Railroad buffs, and there are millions of them now, and I think they're increasing in number, I think would go crazy over the ride. It's got, 17 tunnels and almost an equal number of trestles, some of the sharpest curves in the railroad business, so I think it would be a very interesting ride.
And we have a lot of wildlife in that area, isn't that true?
It is an ideal area for bighorn sheep and lots of rattlesnakes and lots of other wildlife, yes.
Hesmeyer's boss is State's Park Director William Penn Mott, and he also supports the idea for excursion trains.
Well, I think this is a very creative and exciting concept, and I would support it 100%. Carrizo Gorge is a very exciting, dramatic area for people to see, and it's difficult for them to get in there. And this could be not only an opportunity for them to ride in a train, which I think is exciting in itself, but the opportunity to see this area and to interpret this area through an excursion train activity like you're describing, I think would be a great program. And it would eliminate a lot of problems that we run into if you try to do this by automobile or other means, which create pollution problems and environmental problems that today we cannot accept.
We've if the excursion trains went through, it would probably allow people to see a great deal of wildlife, especially bighorn sheep that they cannot see now.
Yes, this area is rich in desert wildlife, and I think that the trains have been running through there, as I understand it, and the wildlife have been acclimated to the fact that there are trains going through. They go through the area at a rather slow speed, so that this would give people an opportunity to see this desert and begin to understand that a desert is not a wasteland, that it's an exciting, dramatic, environmental area that people, once they understand it, can enjoy it and appreciate it and find it even more exciting maybe than some other areas.
The parent company that owns the track rights is the Southern Pacific Railroad, and they seem to be opposed to the project. Does this affect your opinion at all?
Well, I think it's rather unfortunate that today many of the railroads feel that their responsibility is carrying freight, and they don't seem to want to become involved in these new creative kinds of concepts that people really will support. And I think that something like this, they would get tremendous support from the public and would make their trains people-carrying trains rather than freight-carrying trains, and freight can't enjoy the Carrizo Gorge.
This evening, TV8 Reports has taken you to Carrizo Gorge in eastern San Diego County to show you its wild and beautiful scenery and its cliff-hanging railroad on Carrizo Gorge and the Impossible Railroad.